Inmate manipulation and what is really happening behind prison walls. It is something many of us are talking about right now after Casey White escaped from jail in Alabama with the help of corrections officer Vicky White. Now we know the two were in a romantic relationship for about 2 years before being captured in Indiana last week following a car chase. Vicky shot herself, likely took the truth of what really went on between them to the grave. And while you don't hear much about these types of jailhouse relationships, it does not mean that they're not happening, romantic and otherwise. Anthony Ganji has seen it all, and he is the author of the book Correctional Manipulation. Anthony, good to see you tonight. Thank you for being here. So inmate manipulation, there's even a term about some of the games that they play, and you call it downing a duck. What exactly does that mean?
Well, downing a duck is really taking advantage of a staff member that may be a little bit too gullible or naive to the complexity of inmate manipulation. So be advised, when it comes to inmate manipulation, the game is very subtle. And if you go in 100% wanting to help the inmate without being defined by the prescribed roles of the agency, the inmate is going to find a way to take advantage of that want to help.
Well, answer me this. Why are some staff members willing to take that risk? Because I'm sure that they know going in that the risk is there, what's happening behind those walls. What's the most common reason that they get involved with these inmates and help them?
I think their loyalty shifts. I think the inmate gets them to minimize the consequences by building the trust with them. I mean, most of the time, the external incentive not to do something is usually based on not getting caught, which isn't strong enough. When inmate is able to challenge that, you need the internal incentive, the I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons, as opposed to I'm doing the right thing because I don't want to go to jail. If an inmate is able to minimize that external incentive, if they're able to build the trust and at the end of the day tell you, don't worry, I won't report it, well, now the external justification holds no weight. Now it's more about what your values are. And at that point, if you're basing it on external justifications, there are none.
What are some of the ways that inmates use these relationships, build that trust to their advantage? What do they do?
Well, it's usually slow and subtle. I mean, you're going to look for vulnerabilities. The first thing they're going to check at is someone's disposition. One thing, what is their defined purpose? Can I pull them out of their prescribed role? Can I isolate them? I mean, another thing they look at is the environment. And if you have an environment that isn't complacent, then, inmates are going to say, well, this isn't going to be worth the effort. But if you have an environment that's lax and it kind of shows to be more of a resource, then the problem is you're not setting enough obstacles up to prevent the inmate from employing the game. And one last thing, too, the interaction with inmates have increased a lot more than ever done before. So with that said, with the increased level of interactions, we have to be always on point when it comes to where we're allowing that dialogue to go. If the inmate is able to connect with us on a personal level, it's easier for them to pull us out of our prescribed role because we no longer see them as an inmate, because we ourselves no longer see ourselves as defined by the trusted role we're meant to serve.
Anthony, as we look at these pictures of Casey White and Vicky White, I'm guessing that you weren't surprised at all that this type of relationship was happening based on what you know. So if it's that widely known that it's taking place, what's being done to stop it? What are the checks and balances and security that need to be readdressed?
Well, right off the bat, when you notice that you have a complacent culture, especially like this with a young lady who's able to take an inmate out on her own, that would be a PREA violation in itself. The first thing you have to do is you have to look at the culture that permits that. So you have to look from the top down, because the top is what's going to reinforce the culture that we need to make sure things like this don't happen. So technically, you have to really look at all the practices that were in play, because complacency is a unique thing, because what happens here, just like manipulation, complacency is slow and subtle. You don't realize you're complacent until, bang, something like this happens. So when complacency starts becoming practice, and now you have complacency breeding complacency, you wind up having a culture where this is a very forgiving facility.
Wow, it's eye-opening and it's not rare. And the sheriff in that department there in Florence, Alabama, said the buck stops here. I'm glad we're talking about it because it needs to be addressed. Anthony, appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you.
My book is this. Inmate manipulation decoded. Sorry about that.
You got in your plug. All right, Anthony, take care. Terrifying moments.